Challenge yourself. Don't be afraid of this. It's a good lesson not to burn any bridges in life because you never know where you may circle back to. But I've been very blessed with working for some really tremendous companies over the years. Really, I'm an advocate for education and for opportunity within the industry. As far as I don't think of anything in terms of competitive. I think it's all like just we're all in this together. There's more opportunity than what one company can actually do at this particular point. And that's only going to continue to grow and escalate as more technology gets on more vehicles. Continue to challenge yourself, continue to seek out opportunities to connect with folks that are here to help out, and through the resources that are available, both in person, through different association events, through different national level events, through performance groups, through different virtual events.
Welcome to the Auto Repair Boss Show. My name is Jim Parker, and on this show we talk to shop owners and the operators, industry experts about what's really happening inside the auto repair industry, from growing your business to preparing for the future. Today, I'm joined by Joel Adcock, who is deeply involved in the advanced driver assistance systems, ADAS, and diagnostic space, and currently works with Revv, which is a fast-growing technology company focused on helping shops correctly identify and handle advanced vehicle systems. Joel has a really unique background. He's been working from inside shops to working with insurance companies to marketing to scaling up ADAS companies from 3 million, an ADAS company, from 3 million to $24 million. And now he's helping to shape how the industry adapts to this modern vehicle technology. Joel, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it, and appreciate the introduction.
Oh, absolutely. Joel, it's very impressive what you've done in your career. If you don't mind, can you give us a little background about how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, it's kind of a unique story and journey. It's got to my spot where I'm at right now, working for Revv. Actually celebrating my 2-year anniversary today with them, so it's kind of exciting. But I got my start in the industry about 15 years ago. I answered an ad, and it may have been an online job platform. It may have been a newspaper article too, going back to when classifieds were sort of the hot button. But
you're showing our age, Joel.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, without telling how old we are, or telling how old we are. But I was dating my now wife, and I was looking for a job in the city where we live, because we were living about an hour apart. And like I said, answered an ad. It was for a software company that, truth be told, when I did the interview, I had really no idea exactly what the job was about, but they offered me the job and I took it. And it was actually for providing customer support and service for, at the time, what was a cloud-based platform where insurance companies and body shops could kind of connect like the estimatic process, for lack of a better way of saying it. So body shop wrote an estimate and they want to get the insurance approval. They would send it through this platform, and worked there for a couple of years. And then I actually worked in a shop for a couple of years writing estimates. And the gentleman that owned the software company also owned 7 body shops here in Madison, Wisconsin, where we live. And thought, well, this is kind of a unique opportunity to actually go write an estimate, have that customer experience, kind of figure out, what the process looks like now that I'm kind of talking about it on the customer service side. And I got a little frustrated, I think, with people would come in for their appointment for their estimate, and I would ask them how the process is going. We wouldn't necessarily talk about like how we're going to fix the car, because that just goes right over their head. It's more of that transactional thing, like how are we going to take care of them. And one thing that kept coming up was the fact that they were really frustrated with their insurance company. I'm not picking on any specific ones, but they would say, after this claim is done, I'm looking for a new insurance company. I'm like, well, hey, maybe I can transition into the insurance side. So spent a couple of years helping folks understand what's in their policy and what's not, what to expect after an accident. I did spend some time after that, like you mentioned, working for a group doing marketing services specifically for body shops. They're notorious for not being able to represent themselves very good on digital platforms. So think of like their website, social media, Google business pages, those types of things. And what was interesting is around that time that we worked with shops across the country, I'd get a periodic phone call and say, hey, can you put something on our website about ADAS? And I'm like, well, what's ADAS? And this is going back 2016, 2017. So roughly, 8, 9 years ago. And they would tell me a little bit about it. It's like, well, these new driver safety systems that are on these cars, there's cameras and stuff. And I remember like, oh yeah, I remember seeing a Subaru commercial where in the side mirrors had little blind spot indicators, and it would tell you if there was a car in your blind spot without you having to turn your head to look over your shoulder. And so that was kind of interesting. But at the same time, I connected with the gentleman that initially had hired me at the software company many years ago, and he had started a company here in Wisconsin called Precision Diagnostics. And essentially, what we did was provided sublet or subcontracted services to repair shops and collision shops, specifically doing like calibrations for these ADAS systems to make sure they were working correctly, they were pointed in the right direction. We also did other bunch of different services for them as well. But um, like you say, helped them grow considerably over a couple of years that I was with that company. Helped them grow from, I think we were in 2 states up to like 12 states. And in fact, I think they're in like 22 states now. And then we started using Revv, the company I work for now, as a way to help understand. Um, we're writing our estimate at the body shop. We want to know what ADAS systems are on this particular vehicle, what cameras, what sensors, what radars, what LiDAR. And then of those, do we need to pay any attention to which may need a recalibration or a reset or something that we need to do to ensure customer safety? So it's a good lesson not to burn any bridges in life because you never know where you may circle back to. But I've been very blessed with working for some really tremendous companies over the years. And like I said, I'm celebrating my 2-year anniversary today with Revv. It's a great company. We provide that software as a platform, software as a service to our customers. We're roughly in 6,000 shops, I think, at this particular point. And we're continuing to grow forward. So
That's really impressive. The 6,000 shops. What is currently your role at Rev?
so technically, my title is Director of Strategic Partnerships, but it's kind of varied. So I wear a lot of different hats. I do connect with a lot of our companies that are interested in partnering with us, whether that's through an integration, through like an API, through some sort of referral process. We don't necessarily do the calibrations or provide the equipment, so you do need, hardware to sort of turn on the software, if you will. So think of it like when you buy a laptop, that you've got the hardware, but now the software inside of it is one that actually helps the machine sort of run forward. Um, with that, but then I also do a lot of we do a lot of different events. So we found that there's a severe lack of education and understanding that's sort of permeating throughout the industry at this particular point. So we go out and we host our own events. We were just in Houston, Texas last week. We had 30 people that showed up for the day. And, we don't solve all the problems in one day in terms of that event, but we at least let them know that there are resources out there and places that they can go and connect and collaborate and say, hey, look, if we do run into a problem tomorrow or next week, there's some places that we can go to answer some of these questions. So I help facilitate those events. We also do a monthly webinar that I host, and I'll bring in like subject matter experts that are have way more expertise on how to perform calibrations or do diagnostics or programming or anything that's sort of on that new wave within the industry. And then I do a lot of content review with our marketing folks. I host a podcast as well that we bring in subject matter experts and sort of do deep dives on downloading their brains on ways to help connect the industry. And really, I'm an advocate for education and for opportunity within the industry. As far as I don't think of anything in terms of competitive. I think it's all like just we're all in this together. There's more opportunity than what when one company can actually do at this particular point. And that's only going to continue to grow and escalate as more technology gets on more vehicles. I think there's a statistic that I like to point out, like, model year 2024 and newer has 94% of the cars on the road at that age or newer have some sort of ADAS technology on it. So, if you don't think ADAS is in your shop right now, it's going to be very, very soon because of the fact that we've got a little bit older car park on the road right now where it's like 12 and a half years. So, but that's going to continue to evolve and change as well too. So yeah, like I said, I've got a lot of things that I do on a day-to-day basis, which is good for me that it's not the same thing sort of every single day. It changes, and I spend a lot of time on the road visiting with people, which I love to do.
That's cool. I love that you love education. I feel the same way about what I do. Helping people sell businesses. I do a lot of education. I provide
Yeah.
a lot of education for our industry. And I look at it, no matter what industry you're in, it lifts up the entire industry. It makes us all better, and it's a better perception for everybody out there. So I think that I love that you focus on that. Joel, you had mentioned that. Um, you do webinars and podcasts. Where can people find you on the podcasts and the webinars, if you don't mind telling
Yeah,
us?
no, it's so we actually started an association called the United ADOS Collective, and it's a lot of industry associations that are focused on the collision side or the repair side. We didn't necessarily see anything that aligned with the ADOS side, so we wanted to provide a resource for folks to join, have sort of this sense of community and opportunity. There's different social groups that are out there in Reddit threads, and depending on which ones you're dialed into or you're part of, they're not necessarily providing what we felt is the right resource to kind of lift everybody up. So we wanted to kind of shift that narrative a little bit. So the UAC, as we call it as well, we started that back in December of 2024. We've got close to 1,500 members on it. And we've got within there a place where folks can ask questions about, hey, I'm running into this issue. But then we also do host all of our webinars through an events page on there that folks can dial into virtually. I always encourage people to at least register for the events if it's virtual, because even if you're not able to attend, if like the schedules don't allow, we do record them and then we send them out to everybody as far as a link to the recording to anybody that's registered. So we do host those monthly. They are at unitedadoscollective.org, I think is the website. And again, it's free to join, free to subscribe, free to just be a looky loo if you want, or if you want to ask any questions specific to like, hey, how are you guys running your business? Or what challenges are you guys seeing? Or there's typically something always going on within the community on pretty much a daily basis.
Okay, cool. Joel, am I mistaken? I thought you and I were talking a few weeks ago, and didn't you say? Because I know you were talking about that. Hey, there might be some shops out there that have not seen much ADOS situations come in yet. It's more the newer vehicles, and like you said, 94% of all vehicles that are coming out right now have that kind of technology. But am I mistaken? I think you said that in 2029 it's going to be mandatory, correct?
Yeah, it's sort of a benchmark date to look out in the future too. That it's FMVSS 127, which is Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, is the acronym. 127 is going to be the mandate for automatic emergency braking to be on every car coming out or being produced at that particular point. So a good frame of reference for that is back in 2018 was the rear backup camera mandate. So now everything produced 2018 and beyond. If you've noticed, if you bought a new car in the last 8 years, it's got a backup camera. Similar to that is going to be the AEB mandate. And the reason that I think that's going to be, the reason why I think it's kind of come to fruition, for lack of a better way of saying it, is that the AEB safety systems, whether that's through a camera or through a radar or through a combination of different ADAS systems, is by far and away mitigating the most amount of accidents. So you think of like forward-facing ADAS systems that if it's hard braking because the vehicle is detecting an object in front of the car and it's approaching at a rapid pace, or somebody's walking across a crosswalk, or whatever it might be, that the vehicle momentarily takes over, hits the brakes, stops the car. Well, that's your ADAS system that's tied to that AEB functionality. And there's a statistic that I like to share during some of my events or webinars. It's like 45% of mitigated accidents are because of AEB. So almost half of all of them that are, whether it's, blind spot or, lane keep assist, not drifting over from one lane to the next. I mean, those have a certain percentage, but that AEB is by far and away the biggest one. So again, that's not that far away. That's 2.5 years now at this particular point. So that's rapidly approaching. If you've not embraced to some degree, whether ADOS is in your shop, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's probably one of my favorite sayings. If you don't think it's there now, it's going to be very, very, very soon.
Joel, I probably shouldn't be admitting this on a podcast, But I never realized, like, when there's not cars around me, I never realized how many times I do not use my turn signal when I'm changing lanes.
Yeah,
And so, I put that, so I try to change that lane, and the car, slows up, and so
it
it's
reacts.
teaching me to turn that, make that, put that turn signal on no matter what.
Yep,
So I guess that's a good thing.
that is a
So
good thing.
you've seen the industry from multiple angles, from shop floor to insurance to tech and now ADOS. What are you seeing right now that concerns you the most?
I think a lot of shops are just really complacent. They're concerned about the way they ran their business even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not going to be the same. Shops are going to have to embrace technology. They may have to pick a lane in terms of, and I think of like on the collision side, being specific to maybe just a few vehicle brands and like really being the ones that stick out on. We work on these cars because we've got the technology for it. We've got the application. We've got the equipment. Kind of falling into that category. And I think, but what's really concerning is fundamentally shops are just not embracing the fact that the technology exists on these vehicles or that something needs to be done. And I'll give you a really good example is if you took your car into a shop and it got returned back to you as a consumer, you really have no idea exactly what was done to the car other than like what's on an estimate. And they're telling you it needs like a certain sheet metal pulled and they're going to repaint it and blah blah blah. But then there's also these components that may need additional attention that don't necessarily surface up the same ways we think about traditional repairs go. And shops aren't educating their customers on like what they need to do because they don't think anything needs to be done themselves, and because there's no light on the dashboard, there's nothing telling them as they scan the car. If they plug in like their diagnostic scan tool, and it comes back with a relatively clean bill of health, for lack of a better way of saying it, they're just assuming that is all well and good. They can kind of wash their hands of it and deliver the vehicle back to the customer because there's no codes, there's no lights. It's cliche as far as what we hear, but I still hear it all far too often that there's nothing we need to do with this car. They're not doing the additional research to see that just by virtue of taking a bumper off or taking a side mirror off or just even performing a four-wheel alignment may actually trigger a calibration. It's complacency, and I'm really, really concerned about that because the technology is moving really fast. The OEMs are not slowing down on moving to autonomous or fully autonomous vehicles. That is their vision of the future, is to go from, we think of like level 0 being no ADAS systems or no autonomous features to level 5. You think of like a Waymo vehicle where there's, fully functioning autonomous. And we're somewhere in between right now with level 2 to level 3 with some partial automation. Shops are having a hard time even like with just the basics on doing pre-scans. And that really, really concerns me because as much as I think we're closing that gap down, Jim, and I think that, things like I'm doing, and there's some really good resources out there and folks that are really kind of pounding the pavement on the education side. I'm reminded on almost a monthly basis that there's still a big, big gap on that educational piece.
Technology is really affecting a lot of industries right now. I got to say, in the auto body shop collision world, it's something that shop owners really need to take serious, and,
Yeah.
and the people working inside the shops need to take serious because things are moving very, very quickly. Like you said, the cars are coming out; they're getting more and more technology advanced. We're getting automated cars down the road. I mean, they're already making large strides on that, and there's no longer of, hey, I don't really need to learn everything. I've been doing this for 30 years, and
Yep.
I've mastered it. Well, there's all this new technology coming out, and if you want to stay relevant as a shop, you basically got to start learning all this stuff, or you
Yeah.
become irrelevant in a few years.
Yeah. I did a webinar earlier this week. I'm also on the board of the ASA, and it was based on like, how can you effectively use AI to some degree in your shop without it overtaking like everything that you do? Because that's easy to do, right? You get into that habit of like using, like Chat GPT or Claude, and it can help with guidance, I think, for lack of a better way of saying it. Shouldn't be like your truth at this particular point, but shops are starting to fall back into that, and consumers, believe it or not, are starting to use it to like upload a picture into their instance of Chat GPT and to see if like, hey, what's it going to cost to get my car fixed before they even call the shop, or they don't want to file an insurance claim because they're concerned about what that might do to their premium and so forth. But it's okay to use AI to some degree to really understand, but it's got to be good data input. It's got to be, if you're using it responsibly, then the results can be beneficial to you. But if you're putting it in with bad data, for lack of a better way of saying it, I know I say that a lot, but you're going to get the results based on that bad data, right? AI isn't necessarily going to like all of a sudden send you on a path that's corrected because it's only interpreting what you're putting in as far as your inputs go. But that being said, too, there's a lot of shop owners that just, you're right, 30 years in the industry, we've always kind of done it this way mentality. They're going to get left behind pretty quickly. I talked to a lot of younger shop owners that they kind of came from the technology age and they embrace it. They're looking for the opportunities to use the AIs of the world and software to help shore up efficiencies and make their shop more profitable at the end of the day.
Joel, I love that you touched on that AI aspect in the sense that, it's not 100% correct right now. And, you kind of, you hinted around the fact that you kind of need to know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
when you're using it and working on it. And I heard something a while back ago, and I love the saying. The saying is that Chat GPT or Claude or whatever you want to pick, knows everything except for what you know.
Right.
Meaning, like, it knows everything that you don't know, or you think it knows everything you don't know. But the things that you know, when you start playing around on it, you see all the errors and mistakes that it makes. And it just kind of reinforces the fact that, you shouldn't be using Chat GPT or Claude or any of that stuff blindly and think and take everything as 100%
I
knowledge,
think
because somebody that knows the knowledge that uses it are seeing those errors that it makes.
the term that I've heard is the hallucinations of AI.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sort of that, well, it's like anything. If you want to find information that supports your opinion, on the internet, you can certainly ask a question a certain way and you're going to get the response that you're exactly looking for. It's the same way with AI. It's just driven down a little bit further now, even into those some of those details and the way that the responses come back to you. They are good at being able to sort of personalize that because it'll say like, "Ooh, I like where your brain's at," or "I like your thoughts here," or "You're really going down a really good path." And it's that reassurance then that, oh, maybe I did ask a good question without really realizing that maybe it was actually a bad question. So, but you got to be careful with it. That's for sure.
On a previous conversation, you had mentioned that something that really stood out to me, that shops are missing calibrations and sometimes putting vehicles that are not safe back on the road. You want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to. And again, I'm optimistic on us being able to kind of close this gap. But one data point that really stands out to me, and when I started on the ADAS side of the industry back in 2021, so about 5 years now with my previous company, the standing number that really stood out and that was hard to like kind of understand, I think, was for every vehicle that needed a calibration, right? Um, but 85% of those vehicles weren't getting those calibrations. So roughly 8 out of 10 were getting delivered back to a customer where there was a calibration that was required by OEM that wasn't getting that calibration. Fast forward now 5 years, and I would have told you 5 years ago we should be down to like 20-25% by now. We're still at 70%. So 7 out of 10 vehicles. So have we made progress? Absolutely. Platforms like what we do at Revv, there's other platforms that are similar in nature. And, I'm biased certainly to the Revv platform, but I would encourage anybody, if you're not using something, at least use something to harness that information and that data that would typically take you a long time to do research on OEM procedures, which shops don't have the time to do that right now. They don't want to take that time to do that research because it takes a long time. So platforms like Revv shorten that distance down from maybe an hour down to literally seconds. And that can help with being that sort of that guiding principle that we've got this vehicle. We know it's got these ADAS systems. We're doing these things to it in terms of repairs. These are now the calibrations that are required by OEM, which again, now we've got to execute on doing the calibrations. And that brings in a whole other list of challenges where you have to have the proper environment. You have to have the proper equipment, proper training, education, What happens when that calibration fails? Is it a static? Is it a dynamic? Do I know the difference? There's a mountain of different things that you can imagine that I think again creates that challenge for those shops on I don't want to invest. I don't have the ability to train anybody. Who would I designate if I had somebody in my shop? I've had people coming by my shop that provide the sublet services, but I don't know if I necessarily trust them because they don't seem professional, right? They show up and it's just it doesn't feel right, and I don't want to necessarily compound the problem by giving the car to somebody who I think isn't necessarily trained to do what's correct. So again, we're closing that gap down a little bit, Jim, but it's not as quickly as it necessarily needs to be. You and I are vehicle owners, we're consumers. I'm not so much as concerned about my car, but I'm concerned about the vehicle that's across the intersection from me. Maybe they just got their car fixed and maybe they just picked it up, and whatever wasn't working correctly hasn't really surfaced up on their dashboard at this particular point, but maybe it's only a matter of time. And that's what I really, really get concerned about, because people are getting injured, people are getting hurt. I don't like to spread fear on this side of it, but that's something that has to be cognizant in people's minds, that there's way too much at stake. Things can happen out of our control because the vehicle is acting in a certain way that it's doing what it thinks is correct to mitigate an accident, when actually it's compounding the problem because something wasn't calibrated correctly or at all.
Yeah, I know you're not an attorney, but do you know if there's like liability for a shop that releases a car that's not been calibrated, and they get into an accident due to that?
Yeah,
I would imagine there would be.
yeah. I would you as a shop owner, you should assume there would be liability. Absolutely, I think on any vehicle that you touch, whether there is calibrations required or not. I mean, I think that goes without saying. There is liability there. And especially if you're handing it off to a sublet company. Are you handing it off to the sublet company that's got proper protection themselves? They've got proper amounts of liability. Do they provide warranty work? So making sure that you're connecting with the right groups if you're unable to do the calibrations or diagnostics yourself. But I think shop owners typically slept maybe 6 inches off the bed at night because that's what kept them up, is that liability. And now it's even further. They're even sleeping higher up off the bed because it isn't the cars that they're calibrating now and doing things correctly. It's the cars that maybe 2 years ago where they weren't doing anything at all. Like, they're hoping those don't come back to bite them
Mm,
because we don't know what we don't know, right?
yeah, yeah, and the liability things aside, I mean, just the fact that somebody could get seriously hurt or killed. I'm sure none of us would want to see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a lot of owners, when we're talking about all this, a lot of owners think that it's usually an equipment problem, but you made a great point. It's really a knowledge problem.
Mhm.
What do shops not know that they should know, and how do they get themselves up to speed?
Well, I think a good starting point is really that there are some really good resources out there for training and education, and it's not just through like our collective, but there's groups like ASE that provide solid training. There's groups like iCar that provide both module based training and education and in-person training to spend a couple days on how the equipment works and how to perform calibrations. And then there's sort of this post environment training opportunity that like we provide, to go out and actually do events and provide a resource where technicians can ask questions in real time and say, hey, I'm hung up on this vehicle, and here's my setup, here's what I've done so far, and here's some of the specifics. And crowdsourced opportunities, as much as there may, there's really no regulation to it. Like, is the information actually accurate? Well, I'm going to probably fall back on the fact that people that are answering those questions can speak from experience, which is a great place to have. Like we talked about earlier, we learn from experience, and we learn from our mistakes, if for nothing else. But if you were a shop considering bringing ADAS in-house, and I'm meaning that you're looking at buying equipment, the first place I would start is not buying the equipment. Really fully understand like what's at stake, how these ADAS systems work, what resources are there as far as education. Do I anticipate sending somebody off site for a couple of days to go do that training, or would I prefer having somebody come on site to my shop to do the training with me in real time? what's my car count look like? What's my mix of vehicles look like? Is it going to be a mix of static and dynamic calibrations, or is it going to be a strong mix of just dynamic calibrations? I don't necessarily need to have all this equipment. And then really after you understand, I think a lot of those basic pieces and like, all right, who are we going to designate? And if that person's on vacation for a couple of weeks, well, what's our secondary option? Do we have a sublet? Then investigating the equipment. Do we want to bring a mix of OEM equipment in, aftermarket as well? I can tell you a lot of shops have a multi-stacked mix of equipment. They're not just this brand or just that brand or just OEM because there's limitations on coverage. And if you go the all OEM route, as you can imagine, buying equipment for every single OEM that you might touch is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Hence the reason the aftermarkets are where they're at these days. But yeah, I mean, there's good evaluation tools. We actually just launched some methodology. We call it the ADAS maturity curve, and it's a free tool that we offer on our website, Jim. That shops can go in and download this self assessment form, and they can kind of gauge where they're at. Maybe they think they know that look, if you're on the very starting edge of your ADAS journey, you're going to know that. And if you're fully functional, got ADAS equipment, you've got trained technicians, and you're really way out in front of the game, you're going to know that. But for the shops that are kind of in between, they do some of this and some of that, but not this, but not that. And they're really trying to gauge and understand, how do we get to sort of that next level? Or do we continue doing what we're doing as far as sublet goes? We've got a free resource that they can use to say, you fill this out on your own. It's a self-assessment, and you look at where your points are at, and you can see your level 0, level 1, level 2, whatever it might be. And that can be a good starting point as well.
Good, good. Let's fast forward 5 to 10 years. What do you think the industry is going to look like? With ADAS, automatic braking, EVs, and advanced systems. Just all together. What do you think is going to happen?
I hope we have the floating cars by then. I mean, the Jetsons told us that we'd have these by now, but that's certainly.
I've been promised those since I was like 10 years old.
Yeah. I mean, that's it was. No, I mean that's a great question. 5 years from now, boy, that's an eternity really in this industry. I think you'll see, my opinion, certainly, additional regulation coming down. I think you'll see potentially the adaptation of licensure as far as who's performing these ADAS calibrations. And maybe that's I don't think that's necessarily at like a federal level, but maybe at a state level. States will say, hey, look, we really want to make sure that whoever's performing these has a license. They're doing things correctly. I think of like the state of Michigan, you have to have a license to do collision repair. Could something follow suit? Certainly could be possible. I think the cost of equipment will certainly, like with anything, it may come down a little bit. It might be certainly more affordable for the shops that have really been concerned about that investment. But I think thinking about this too in terms of opportunity, where on the collision side, claims volume is way, way down, which I think that's going to continue to trend down. We're going to see less accidents. The technology is going to continue to improve. I mean, there's now the technology that was recently introduced at CES late last year, using thermal imaging cameras. And it can actually see further out than like where your headlights can see. So your headlights have got a, field of vision and view that's only to a certain distance, right? But these cameras now can see even beyond that. So if there's, I live here in the Midwest, if there's a deer at 500 yards, but my headlights don't see it, but the camera picks it up because it can sense the heat, that helps keep me safe, right? Or mitigates that accident. So the technology will continue to improve. We'll see less accidents. I think you'll see on the repair side, there's 14 OEMs right now that require a calibration after a four-wheel alignment. That's not going to go away. There's a lot of conversation around, well, we're going to see self-calibrating vehicles. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. We're going to see potentially just dynamic only calibrations. We don't have to have all the static equipment. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen either, because the reason that they have static calibrations where the car is stationary and you've got the target boards in front of the vehicle is based on vehicle geometry and proper alignment. Well, the only way you can do that, you can't do that through a dynamic calibration, has to be through a static calibration. So 5 years, I think we'll see a lot of the same things, but it's going to continue to compound and proliferate in a way that the last 5 years we've learned a lot. I think in the next 5 years as well, even 10 years especially, we're going to see a massive amount of shift. I think we're going to see consolidation of collision shops that were unwilling to adapt to some of this technology, Jim, and the ones that do, I think, will be the ones that sort of flourish going forward as well.
And the consolidation right now, I specialize in selling auto repair related businesses across the country. And, collision shops, out of all the different kinds of auto repair related businesses, collision shops are the number one most exciting acquisition for private equity and industry players.
Fascinating.
And you're right, Joel. It's probably going to keep continuing.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, I mean, that's going to take a big hit out of shop owners, isn't it? Is just a lot less accidents, right?
Well, and that's what they're seeing now. I mean, there's the CCC crash report. CCC is the sort of the gold standard as far as estimating and repair platforms, not repair, but RO platforms or CSMs. There's Mitchell as well on the collision side, and they've got a decent amount of market share too. But CCC produces this report on a quarterly basis that's really, they've got a mountain of data that they use to help understand really what the conditions are of the collision repair side, at least. What they're finding in the most recent report, 40% of folks that have a collision where it's considered a total loss are changing vehicle manufacturers as they go out and buy a new car. That blows me away. So if you're in a BMW today and you get into an accident, it's considered a total loss. There's a 40% chance you're not going to buy another BMW. 23% of vehicles in a collision now are considered total loss. So there's less vehicles simply to repair there simply because the insurance companies are deeming them as total losses. Your minor fender benders, your parking lot hits, your grocery cart door dings are not getting fixed as often. People are not filing claims. They're not doing the same things as far as having the same amount of care and concern for the cars because they're concerned about it from a financial standpoint. And on the repair side, you're seeing
talking about because of the economy and things that
absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of economic factors with that too, but it's more like, well, this is just cosmetic. I don't necessarily need to go get this fixed. Not realizing that there may be something that's behind that bumper cover that may be actually providing some sort of safety system that got knocked loose or its alignment changed or shifted a little bit. They don't know that. But it's and again, this is really focused on the collision side where we see a lot of this data really telling a story that a lot of shops are seeing. On the repair side too, people are concerned about, routine service and maintenance. And I think you may see at a time what we just talked about, 5 or 10 years from now, could there be where you've got as part of your routine maintenance and service intervals where your safety systems are recalibrated or at least rechecked? I lived in California for 10 years, and it's an emission control state where your registration was tied to whether or not you passed a smog check. And if you had to take your vehicle to a specific place that put it up on these rollers and they did a smog test. And if it passed smog test, you could go get your registration completed. Could there be something similar to that with system degradation, from hitting potholes or you've driven at 15,000 miles, so now this stuff has to get recalibrated? Well, where would you take that to? And could be something of consideration as well. So there's a lot of plateauing going on with the number of cars coming into shops, but at the same time, I think if you embrace the ADAS side of things at this particular point, it can offset a lot of those things in terms of that lost revenue that shops may have experiencing the last 18, 24 months or so.
Yeah. Joel, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's estimated that in the United States right now that over 40% of all small business owners were born before 1964. So, 40% of all business owners in this country right now are baby boomers or older,
Yeah.
so they're getting up there in age. What are you seeing as far as, the older shop owners and the resistance to this new technology? What are you seeing out there?
I think that's a really good mix of like what we see. Like I was at an event yesterday over in Milwaukee with a performance group, and you glance at the attendees in the audience, and it's a sort of a mixed bag. You've got sort of the older generation and you've got a newer generation that maybe they're taking over for the older generation, or maybe it's coming from the family, or they bought into a shop that they saw opportunity, and then you see somewhere in between too. Um, it is a struggle. I can think that if you've been around the industry 30, 35 years, even 25 years, and again, you kind of fall back on your complacency, or this is how we've always sort of done things, and this technology doesn't necessarily need to have any additional considerations or concern. It's not everybody that sort of that older crowd that's not embracing it, but they certainly have a certain reluctance to it simply because they just don't want to admit that they have to invest in the technology, the equipment, the training. Um,
Both
in
money
fact,
and time.
what's that?
Both they have to invest both money and time. In
It's exactly it, right? They're like, well, is this stuff even necessary? Because then they may get a secondary opinion from somebody local. Say, oh, you don't have to worry about that. There's no lights on the dashboard. You don't have to worry about that. There's no reason for this stuff. Nobody's getting hurt. They're not necessarily acknowledging the fact that there are lawsuits going on or people getting injured. It is a struggle. And, I can imagine that and again, that's why we encourage them. Like, there's a certain path and process you can take where it's not just necessarily buying the equipment as your starting point. Look around you if you're in a metro area and acknowledge the fact that you've got people that are resources from a sublet side that'll come in and help you with these things. They've
Mhm.
got the equipment, they've got the training, they've got the resources. They're more than happy to do that work with you. They're not going to do it necessarily just as a pass through as far as cost goes. There's some opportunity for you to make money as a shop owner as well, but at least embrace those opportunities first and foremost, and then see what that opportunity looks like. And as you look at exiting from the business, whether that's through a merger, or selling it to whomever, or passing it down to your family, setting them up for that future success because of the fact that you've taken the time to really understand exactly what's at stake and how these things work. So
Yeah, I gotta say, like, if some, to me, in my opinion, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but in my opinion, if a listener out there, owns a auto body collision shop, and they are not, their shop is not embracing the technology and staying on top of it, in conjunction with that, do the repairs and the work on these vehicles with the ADOS, but also in conjunction with there's less and less accidents. If they're not going to embrace and go to that next step, in my opinion, they should reach out to me or somebody like me and start to highly consider possibly selling their business so they're not left behind. Because
I think that's where a lot of
you can
folks
fast
land.
forward 3 years from now and their
Yeah.
business could start to take that downturn. And obviously, buyers want the business that are looking for the businesses that are remaining steady or increasing in sales, not slowly being decayed.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, EBITDA is the big determining factor in a lot of that stuff as far as the value goes. And
Hmm.
for the ones that have embraced this to some degree, or they've got a good relationship with a sublet, that certainly I think helps sort of pad those stats. But yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. I think there's a lot of shop operators right now that because they don't want to have any part of this, they are really considering like what their next steps are. Is it selling? Is it through acquisition, passing it down to a family member, or just ultimately closing up shop altogether? Just saying, hey, we're shutting the whole operation down, and we'd rather pursue those opportunities post life, post repair life versus having to deal with this stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years for sure on that side.
Well, let's flip this. Let's flip this to the positive side.
Yeah,
Who's actually going to win in this environment?
that's an awesome question. I think the shops that have already sort of the that progression into that more of that maturity side, and I don't mean that necessarily in a derogatory way for the ones that haven't, but they've embraced it. They were early adopters. As with anything, they will continue to learn the lessons of experience, understand what the investment pieces are and component, what the ongoing costs are as far as subscription and training. They're the ones that will say, hey, we've got a 20 or 25% dip in volume. and the cars that we're not seeing now, but we're not necessarily missing a beat as far as our productivity goes, our revenue and our margins, because there's some really good margins when you're doing calibrations. And even if you're subletting, there's some decent margins there too. They're the ones that I think will win the day. They're the ones that will start to, in the very near future, Jim, they'll start to like learn some really good practices on educating the consumers, spending time with the dealerships on, hey, when you guys sell a car, you should be probably talking about this stuff. And I'll give you a good example. When we bought my wife's Explorer 3 years ago, asking the gentleman like, hey, what safety systems are on this car? And he couldn't tell me because he hadn't done the research on it and he'd been there a long time. That's got to continue to adapt, I think, as far as what those relationships look like with the dealership groups. And then, yeah, I think, if you're out in front of this now, you've got a good chance. If you're going to start sooner than later. And you can see some net new gains pretty quickly, just by following a good process, really understanding that this has got to be a culture within our shop. It can't be just the person that does the calibrations, that they're the only one owning this. It's got to be from really top to bottom. The ownership's got to, or the ownership has to come from the ownership as far as like the buy-in of like why we're doing this and why we see opportunity with this. But there's there's a mass amount of opportunity. You look at the number of companies that are getting into, I would call it the sublet game, where they've spent time as a technician at a shop, or they spent time as an ADAS technician at a shop or for a different sublet company, and they see opportunity to go out, get a mobile van, get equipment. They're going to go out and work with shops, whether they're collision or repair, and say, hey, help. We can help with these vehicles. We can help you guys get these cars back on the road safe, and we can help drive a little bit more profit here as far as revenue goes and everything. So massive amount of opportunity. I mean, it's it'll be a $2 billion industry by 2030, and I think that's a very conservative number,
Wow.
quite frankly. Yeah,
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Joel, I'm so
yeah,
glad you're on the show. You've provided so much great information. Where do you think shops should invest first? In training, partnerships, technology? Like where should
yeah.
a shop begin if they're a little behind?
I think a good place to start is just really evaluating. What does your car mix look like? Do you really want to invest on bringing ADAS in house? And then if you do, what does your footprint look like? Do you have the proper environment to perform a certain number of calibrations in house? And that means more of the statics versus the dynamics. But really just sort of that self-evaluation, that self-assessment. Like, what are our goals? How are we embracing the technology? What have we done at this particular point? Have we been steadfast in our belief that no lights, no codes, no equals no calibrations? Or are we starting to attend more events? Are we starting to associate with ourselves with more performance groups or the UAC? Or, because honestly, Jim, every event you go to, ADOS is one of the topics of conversation. There's no getting away from it. Even at now on the repair side, like I said, I was at Tectonic last week, which first class event all around. It was absolutely amazing. They had not only myself, but they had other folks from the ADOS side of the industry giving presentations during some of the breakout sessions. So it's starting to matriculate into that side of the industry. So I think it comes down to like, what are your goals? What do you want to control as far as vehicles being done at your shop? And for those that you can't do, like, what does that process look like? Or where are you sending those off to? And, what does it look like from an investment standpoint? And thinking of it as an opportunity to drive profit and not just necessarily a cost center. So, and then, evaluating like what training and education opportunities are there. Are you willing to send somebody off to a training for a couple of days and maybe lose a couple of days of productivity, but knowing that the net gain result as they get back on site will be positive? Or is it more of you're looking for something on site to do training at your shop? And then what does that ongoing cost and subscription faculty look like? And again, I think the last place a shop should really start is just, going to an event and buying equipment. Because if I've walked into one shop, I've walked into 1,000 they've got a pallet full of equipment for performing calibrations sitting in a corner, unboxed, still sitting on the pallet today. And I go back to that exact same shop 6 months, and it's still in the same spot. It's just collecting more dust, basically. So that should be your last result. I know I've got a lot of partners that may listen to this that are on the equipment side, and I'm not like trying to throw you guys under the bus, but I think they do a really good job too of getting into the shop and like really truly evaluating what's the shop's goals. Like, how can we work with you to set you up for success and not just sell you equipment? Looking for that partnership, looking for that sort of that extension of your production facility, and not just make it transactional.
Yeah. Joel, Joel, is there anything that we didn't discuss today that you think any last thoughts you want to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think challenge yourself. Don't be afraid of this. Like I said, there's a lot of great resources. I'm not an ADAS expert by any stretch. I don't claim to be. I've never actually performed a calibration. I've seen lots of them done. I've seen lots of them get set up. I've seen lots of other things being done within a shop that are by the book, and I've seen a lot of things where things were done, thought correctly, but actually were not correctly. And it's we got to continue to like not curb those folks' ambition. So, um, continue to challenge yourself, continue to seek out opportunities to connect with folks that are here to help out, and through the resources that are available, both in person, through different association events, through different national level events, through performance groups, through different virtual events. Um, I know it's always difficult sometimes as far as time constraints go, but I think a lot of these opportunities are well worth the opportunity and time investment to really understand, like, hey, I'm not in my own silo here. I'm not in a boat by myself. There's a lot of folks that are still adapting, learning, struggling, trying to fill in these gaps. There's a lot of challenges, and we can all learn together. And I think those are sort of the big takeaways that I would say as far as don't be afraid of it. It is part of our nature now that these vehicles are here to stay. That's not going to change. And yeah, and if I can be of any resource to anybody, certainly reach out anytime. And my phone's always available, and I'm happy to chat. And if I don't know the answer, then I'm blessed to have a pretty deep Rolodex of folks that certainly might.
Yeah, you're showing your age again about that Rolodex.
Yeah. People understand what that is, right?
So, so how can people reach out to you, whether they want to learn more about Revv or the ADOS collective?
Yeah.
How can they reach out to you on LinkedIn or events, webinars, resources, anything you can provide them?
Yeah, probably the easiest route is I'm pretty active on the collective. And again, that's unitedadoscollective.org. You can sign up. It's free membership. Find me on there. Shoot me a message, direct message. I'm looking at that pretty much every day, and I'm happy to respond. The Revv website is revhq.com. We do demonstrations through our sales team on how the platform works. There's no obligation by any stretch, but if you're curious about, if you do have equipment in your shop and you're wondering like, well, how can I make this, or how can I turn it on more frequently? Looking at a platform like Revv can certainly help answer those questions. Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn. Tell you the truth, I don't know what my LinkedIn handle is. I know it's custom, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure what it is, so I don't want to like say it incorrectly on here. But if you type in my name,
I wouldn't know it either, Joel. So
yeah, no. It's so if you type in my name, I've got sort of a unique name. It should be able to come up and have my picture on there. So yeah, like I said, I spent a lot of time out on the road, going to a lot of events, and spent a lot of time just trying to connect with people and help them out as much as I can. So,
Joel, seriously, I really appreciate you taking the time out and talking to us today. Your perspective and insight is just, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for being
appreciate
on.
it. Thanks for having me, Jim. I really appreciate it.
Hey, if you're out there listening and you're finding this information valuable, please make sure to subscribe and just share it with another shop owner you think might benefit from it. And I really appreciate you listening. Until next time, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. Joel, that really was great.
Awesome.
That was great. You did fantastic.
Thank you.